Thanks for downloading a 3CR podcast. 3CR is an independent community radio station based in Melbourne, Australia. We need your financial support to keep going. Go to www.3cr.org.au for more information and to donate online. Now stay tuned for your 3CR podcast.
Hello and welcome to It's Lost in Science for another week.
Hooray!
Hooray for Lost in Science.
Oh my goodness, I've missed it so much. I mean, I know that sounds like don't like it, but I do it every week. In some ways, I am lost in science.
Well, you are. You're a lost soul in science is what you are, Chris. And my name is Claire, and well, I for one am happy to be here. With you, Chris.
Didn't say I wasn't happy to be here. You are misinterpreting me there, I feel.
And I'm happy that you're listening to us for another week, our dear listeners. And this week, Chris, what do you have for us?
I have a story that was it was broken a few weeks ago by a collaboration involving Australian and Danish researchers, I believe.
Australian and Danish researchers, were they researching Tasmanian princesses? Just trying to figure out what the Danes and the Australians have in common.
They have in common, well, we all like in the song, we all look up at the same bright sky, but we do see different skies, obviously, in different hemispheres of the world. But there are some things in common. And one of those things is the Andromeda Galaxy. Have you heard about this?
No, I haven't. The Andromeda Galaxy being the closest galaxy to our galaxy?
Closest major galaxy to our own galaxy. Yeah, there's been, they basically, I don't want to alarm anybody. There has long time been discussions about whether the Andromeda Galaxy will collide with our own Milky Way galaxy. So,
right.
And this story to, I guess, calm people down who might be worried about this, that it's going to be further off than was initially feared. I know you've all been worrying about this particular event, but we'll get into that. But that's kind of a spoiler that you can relax a little bit. Significantly further off that you can afford to wait until I tell you the whole story. I don't have to break it now.
That is excellent. And, well, this week on the show, we are also delving into the archives to hear from Stu, doing what Stu does best, which is talking about fungi. Because not only is he a fun guy, but he's also a fungi expert. And this is one of our favourite stories of Stu exploring cannonball fungi, or how it is often called artillery fungi. So this fungi is capable of shooting spores. When you think about fungi shooting spores, you think like, I don't know, a couple of centimetres maybe. This fungi can shoot spores 6 metres.
Wow, yes.
6 metres. It's just incredible. And we need to know more about fungi. We need to be ready when the fun guys turn on us.
Yeah. And you probably are at more risk of being hit by a fungus than by a galaxy, Sarah.
Exactly. So it's, it's all about how to avoid galaxies and mushrooms on the show today. So on with the show.
Hello, yes, you are listening to Lost in Science, and my name is Chris, and I am talking about the Andromeda Galaxy. Now, Claire, you clearly have heard of the Andromeda Galaxy. What do you know about the Andromeda Galaxy?
Okay, I know one thing about the Andromeda Galaxy, and it's what you already said in the intro, which was it's the galaxy that's closest to the Milky Way. It's like our neighbour galaxy.
Yeah, it is our kind of neighbour galaxy. I mean, it depends on how you define galaxy. It is the closest large galaxy, I suppose, because there are
Oh, there are others.
Well, there's the satellite galaxies, the Magellanic Clouds you may have heard of. The possibly going to be renamed Magellanic Clouds. That may enter this story later on in a few minutes' time. But the Andromeda Galaxy, it is a nearby galaxy. When I say nearby, it is 2.5 million light years.
Okay, that's not that nearby.
Well, depending on how you look at things. So it's okay. It's similar to our Milky Way galaxy. It is larger. It's probably about twice as big as our Milky Way galaxy.
Twice as big.
Yeah, yeah. But like our galaxy, it is very similar that it is a spiral galaxy.
Right.
So our galaxy is about 100,000 light years across,
Mm-hmm.
whereas the Andromeda galaxy is about 200,000 light years across.
Okay.
But that's the sort of scale we're talking about there, 100,000, 200,000, and between them about 2.5 million. So you're kind of looking like the size of the Andromeda galaxy is about just over 10 times the distance is between them is. The distance is about 10 times the size of the Andromeda galaxy. It's kind of on the same order of magnitude, similar order of magnitude is what I'm saying.
And does it have a black hole at the middle of it as well?
As far as we know, all galaxies have a black hole at the middle of them. I don't know too much about the black hole at the center of the Andromeda galaxy, or M31. Technical name.
Hang on, that's the Andromeda galaxy, or is that the black hole?
No, the Andromeda galaxy is M31.
M31.
Yeah.
Well, it sort of loses a bit of the poetry, doesn't it? It sounds like a motorway.
Well, yeah, okay, but except that M31 it does sound like a motorway. M31 is its name from the Messier catalogue of astronomical objects, or nebulae, as the case may be. So it took a while for scientists to figure out that it was another galaxy like ours. It was basically a fuzzy spot in the sky, what they call a nebula. And so they named all the nebula and catalogued them and numbered them. And so for a long time it was actually called the Andromeda Nebula until they figured out it was another galaxy. Because it can actually be seen with the naked eye as just kind of a fuzzy spot in the sky. However, that's really what you can see. There is a kind of the central part of it, which is where your black hole would be located. But the galaxy itself, the spiral arms extend much further and are fainter to see. You need a telescope or good pair of binoculars to see them. If you could see them, this thing in the sky, it's not insignificant. It would be 6 times the diameter of the full moon. So if you could see the whole thing with the naked eye, that's how big it would be. It is actually, because like I said, the distance from us is about 10 times its size. So it is quite significant in the sky.
That's taking up a fair bit of real estate.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's not surprising then that it was discovered that it is moving, and in fact is moving towards us.
So it's getting bigger every night.
It is getting bigger every night. It is getting bigger every night. Now, I did look into a bit of the history of this. The discovery that is moving towards us, that was made in 1917, so over 100 years ago. By one.
Cool. How did they do that?
Edward Emerson Barnard was the astronomer, an American astronomer, who discovered that. He looked at basically what they often do for motion of things in the universe, looked at the Doppler shift. So you look at the light from the stars in this galaxy, and it's slightly, well, in this case, it'd be slightly shifted towards the blue end of the spectrum, meaning it's moving towards us. The whole Doppler shift, it's like the car coming towards you in the street. It's the pitch as higher as it's coming towards you, and it gets lower, it moves away, it goes meow, like that. Light does the same thing, that when something is moving towards you, it looks more high frequencies, it's more blue light. When it's moving away, it looks more red light. We often talk about the red shift of distant objects in the universe because the universe is expanding, so things are generally moving away from us. But this particular galaxy is moving threateningly towards us.
You say threatening.
Well, it sounds like it's thinking of the sky that's 6 times the size of the moon is coming towards us. It seems quite threatening. I just want to mention Edward Emerson Barnard for a second, because I did look him up. Interesting chap, it seems. He was a very gifted astronomer. He basically back in the 1880s, there was a particular, I don't know who was, a businessman who was offering a $200 prize for discovering comets. And Barnard basically discovered 5 of them and built a house with the proceeds from discovering comets. So he paid for his house by discovering comets.
Good on him.
He discovered, look, he noticed a whole lot of things which I won't go into. I learned a bit from reading about Mr. Barnard. Anyway, So he looked at the red shift or the blue shift, sorry, the Doppler shift, and found out that the galaxy is moving towards us. A bit of calculation would indicate that actually, I should say it's moving quite fast. It's moving at 100 kilometers per second, but it is a long way away.
That does seem quite fast.
It does seem quite fast. So again, threateningly, but.
Fast if it was on Earth, but the distances you were talking about before, how long would it take to reach us? Come on, Chris.
About 5 billion years. Which is we've probably got other things to worry about in that time, because this whole idea that the sun is going to expand, turn into a red giant, and potentially swallow the Earth. No one knows for certain enough, from what I can gather, whether it is actually going to swallow the Earth. It's going to get big enough to potentially reach the rays of the sun will reach the orbit of the Earth, but it's kind of where it's sort of on the edge, periphery, or whether we actually get swallowed by the sun or not. I feel that if you're kind of that close to a star, it doesn't matter too much. But also, this is 5 billion years in the future. Like, the Earth has been around for, 4.5 billion years?
Yeah.
5 billion years is a long time. But people like to talk about this going, oh, we've only got about 5 billion years until the sun eats us up. People like to talk about that. But anyway, so that was the calculation that the Andromeda galaxy would strike the Milky Way galaxy.
Wow.
Purely a mutual collision, really, in about 5 billion years' time. But anyway, this has been a concern. What would this happen? Yes.
What happens when a galaxy collides with another galaxy?
Well, really not a lot, I guess. So, because although there's a lot of stars, a lot of gas and dust, essentially there's a lot of space between the stars as well. So you'll get, essentially they'll mess up. I've heard it called, you get like the Milky-Andromeda galaxy. It'll be that combined to be a big galaxy. And we've seen this in looking at else in the universe. You've seen galaxy collisions. You've seen kind of irregular galaxies formed by the collision of other galaxies. This does happen. The chance of actually being hit by another star or something is probably pretty low. It's more likely that the black holes would eventually combine in billions upon billions of years, that they would meet each other, but that's a long way off. Hey, look, it's just an interesting thing that would happen, I guess. But anyway, the trouble with this is we don't know for certain, because one of the problems is you can tell how fast a galaxy is moving towards you, but you can't tell how much it's moving sideways. Like, this 100 kilometers per second sounds very fast moving towards you, but at the distance of 2.5 million light years, at similar kind of speed, if it was moving sideways at that speed, you wouldn't be able to see it, really. So it's very hard to tell whether it actually would hit us, because you don't know how much sideways motion it's got.
Right.
So what these scientists have done is they've tried to do some calculations of more accurate calculations, taking account all the galaxies around us. And this includes the Milky Way galaxy, the Andromeda galaxy, but also another one called M33, which is the Triangulum galaxy, which is a bit further out. But more significantly, the Large Magellanic Cloud, which is one of the satellite galaxies orbiting our galaxy. And particularly if you look at the effect of the gravity of the Large Magellanic Cloud, it pulls things enough away that in about over half of their calculations, where they did a lot of simulations, in half of the scenarios, it took about 10 billion years for the galaxies to collide.
Right.
So, which has made everyone breathe a sigh of relief.
Wow.
Yeah, it's only going to be 10 billion years. Of course, we'll be swallowed by the sun potentially long before that, but it means that you don't have to worry about this.
Oh, well, just snooze your alarm for another 5 billion years. Am I right?
Exactly. So I don't know whether that's good news or not. It's certainly interesting news. If you want to know the future of our local group of galaxies, but I don't know. Like I said, we've probably got other things to worry about in the next 5 billion years or next 10 billion years.
Sometimes it's good to plan really, 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 really far ahead into the future, though, isn't it?
Yeah. And if you can snooze the clock, maybe, set it for 10 billion years, and so you can wake up and see the show.
If you have listened to the show long enough, you may recall that I am something of a fungi guy. The fungi are a pretty important kingdom of organisms, though, and we really don't know that much about them. The fungi were originally included in the plant kingdom, basically because they didn't move and they seem to have roots, but that's really, underestimating the fungus as a group of organisms. They're not plants. They're in many ways more like animals, but they're not animals either. So they get their own kingdom, the fungi.
Oh, that's good. That's good because that means that there's much room to include them.
There's much room to improve the puns.
Don't get too mycelia with the puns. Oh, that one didn't work.
Now, most of the time, we really only pay attention to the fungi when they cause us a problem. Either they make people sick, or they make animals sick, or they make plants sick, which we want the plants to do things for us, so we don't like them getting sick either. But the fungus I'm talking about tonight is not a pathogen of humans or animals or plants. It feeds on decaying wood like any good saprotroph, and it doesn't really cause much of a problem while it's doing that. And that's how it spends most of its time, just munching away on dead bits of wood. Now, this fungus or genus of fungi are known as Spherobolus, which basically translate as throwing ball.
Oh.
And sphere and is a sphere, and a bolus is to throw. But it's when they produce spores that they catch the attention of humans. And some might say fussy humans, but I'll explain why. So when the ball thrower fungus produces spores, they are dark, sticky, almost black little spheres. And that gives them one of their common names, which is cannonball fungus, because they kind of look like little tiny cannonballs. So the little cannonballs are not content to fall on the ground near the parent fungus. They are built for travel. They're built for spreading, which is the entire purpose of spores. And these ones spread very well. When they eject the spore-containing body, which is called a glebus, they can shoot that glebus over 6 meters, which is pretty far, considering we're talking about a fungus which is about 4 or 5 millimeters in height.
Oh, really? That's a very long way then, yeah.
It's a little tiny little thing, and it shoots this thing over 6 meters. And this is where one of the other common names of the fungus comes from. It's also known as artillery fungus, because it fires off these cannonballs like artillery. It shoots them all around. So the glebus is fired out of the fruiting body using osmotic pressure. We love a bit of osmotic pressure. So this is built up by the fungus. The fungus converts glycogen into glucose, which is a very simple sugar. The sugar increases the osmotic potential inside the spore-producing body, and it sucks in more water and makes the water pressure really, really high within the fruiting body, and then it shoots the little glebus out of the fruiting body. So it's a pretty amazing little process that it's got figured out here. Now, the fruiting bodies are full of sugar, so the little glebus is covered in sticky goo when it gets shot out, which allows it to stick to things, whatever happens to be around. It sticks onto surfaces like grass blades and leaves and fur and whatever happens to be around, which also helps spread the fungus around. The spores contained inside the glebus can survive for up to 12 years after they're ejected. So they can wait out long periods with no food source. They can pass through animal digestive tracts without damage. So they can, land on a blade of grass, get eaten by a sheep or a cow or a kangaroo, whatever, and they move it around to somewhere else, and then it can sit around there and wait for the right time to grow.
And perhaps you've preempted my question, but how does it know it's the right time if they can sit around for 12 years?
Like most fungi, the conditions are right. So it's usually can detect that it's sitting on an appropriate food source, which in this case is dead bits of wood, which is kind of literally lying around all over the ground everywhere. It's not hard for it to find this kind of material. And then it's got to have enough moisture and the temperature's got to be right. So almost like a germinating seed, I suppose. They just sort of wake up and start munching. So under natural conditions, these tiny fungi have evolved to shoot their spores as far as possible away from standing plants and obstacles, and they shoot towards light. Now, I've tried to figure out how they know which direction the light's coming from, but they do seem to be able to sense the direction that brightness is coming towards the fungus, and they can shoot in that direction.
Do they have like eyes or something?
They just have photosensitive cells or something, which is, kind of a precursor to eyes. And there's obviously lots of different precursors to eyes, but fungi, I mean, there are the fungi that can swim around. So if they can swim around and see, then we're in serious trouble. So they have been recorded as being phototropic, and they've sort of measured this and put them in different environments, and they shoot towards the lightest color that they can perceive, or the direction of the light is probably more accurate to say. Now this is where humans come into the story. If the fungus is just out in the middle of a paddock or in the middle of a forest or something, wherever the light's coming from, it'll shoot towards that. If you've got a large reflective surface that's reflecting a lot of light, or a lot more than the ambient light from other directions, it will shoot towards that surface. So humans tend to build things like houses, and we surround the houses with things like gardens. Now, I've probably mentioned this once or twice, but one of the most common pieces of garden advice is to mulch your garden beds with organic matter. It helps suppress the weeds. It reduces the evaporation of water from bare soil. It makes the plants a lot happier. But one of the most common mulches people use is wood chips or mulch tree prunings, all kinds of dead bits of wood, which is what this fungus feeds on. So you put these garden beds all around your house with the mulch on top, and you get these spherobolous fungi growing on the mulch, and then when they produce their little glebi, they shoot them towards the lightest thing that they can detect, which is often the wall of the house. So if you think of weatherboard houses painted white and painted in these pale heritage colors and all this sort of thing, when the garden bed's right next to the house, then the weatherboards get covered in tiny little black specks, which, because they're so sticky, are very difficult to remove. And they also produce pigments in the fruiting body, which is still attached, and they stain things like paint, and they leave marks even if you do remove them, which is actually really hard. You have to use like pressure washing to get them off the surfaces. So this is where we have a problem, and the spores are very resilient. There's not really any way to kill them off, and basically they're the inactive phase of the fungal life cycle anyway. So you're not really stopping the problem from happening if you spray them with something after they've already spattered all over your nice clean white walls. The fungus is growing in the mulch. So then you might think, well, why don't we apply some sort of fungicide to the mulch? Well, that will kill off not only these fungi, but all the other fungi, which are also breaking down the mulch. And you're basically arresting that decomposition cycle, which is kind of the reason that we put the mulch on in the first place. And there's a whole lot of other things. One of the things about most fungicides is that they're generally pretty toxic to other things as well, particularly invertebrates and worms and things like that. The fact that fungi are closely related to animals, even though they're not animals, means that a lot of things that are toxic to fungi are also toxic to animals. So we don't really want to go spraying fungicide just to stop these little black flecks from hitting the side of the wall. I've been reading that in the US, people are in litigation. I mean, when are they not in litigation in the US? Let's be honest about that. But, litigation with their insurance companies, people are claiming insurance claims to get their weatherboards or their paneled houses replaced because they're damaged by these fungus, and the insurance companies say, no, it's a natural process and we're not liable for it, and all this sort of thing.
What are they saying? Like, oh, this fungus, it's like shooting cannonballs at my house. How do you?
They wouldn't be prone to exaggeration, surely. But yeah, it's basically they're saying it's property damage, but it's not something they can do anything about. There's not really a specific solution to the problem. You could probably avoid using wood chips as a mulch around your house, but if they can throw them 6 meters, you're talking about quite long distances as well. There has been some research. There's things that if you introduce, so you get mushroom compost from where they grow edible mushrooms in basically mushroom factories. You get that mushroom compost and mix that in with your mulch, and the other microbes in that tend to suppress the artillery fungus from producing spores, and there's all sorts of things. But I think probably the simplest solution is don't paint your house white, and it probably won't be a problem. They're attracted to the light surface. And, it is interesting that in America that, from what I've seen, they have a white house, but they don't seem that worried about whether it gets tarnished or not. They've put all sorts of things in it that weren't very good. But, look, basically, if you're going to have garden beds right up to your walls, maybe don't have white walls. Maybe go for, darker bricks or something like that. See how you go, but there's not really any way to avoid these. They're everywhere. They're in every continent that's not frozen, basically. So I think we're just going to have to put up with them.
Well, I'm going to be looking for the telltale splashes of artillery fungus.
They're literally everywhere.
And that's all we have time for on another episode of Lost in Science. Thanks for listening. Lost in Science is recorded on the lands of the Kulin Nations and the Ngunnawal people, and broadcast across Australia on the Community Radio Network with the kind support of the Community Broadcasting Foundation. If you would like to get in touch with us, we would love to hear from you. You can drop us a line at lostinsci@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, where we are Lost in Science on 3CR, or you can just tune in wherever you find us, on your radio, on your podcast, next week when Chris, Stu, Lyndon and Claire get Lost in Science.
Thanks for listening to a 3CR podcast. 3CR is an independent community radio station based in Melbourne, Australia. We need your financial support to keep going. Go to www.3cr.org.au for more information and to donate online.